Hey, thank you so much for checking out our YouTube channel. And I just want to say hello to everyone watching right here in Hollister, California, and wherever else this is reaching. Welcome to our channel. We're so glad you tuned in. As a matter of fact, would you go ahead and right there in the comments, let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to know, and in the future, reach out to you. Also, go ahead and hit like and subscribe, and also hit that alert button so you'll never miss a message. So right now you're about to watch this Sunday's message, and I know it's gonna bless you. Enjoy.
Can you open with me to John chapter 13? John chapter 13, we're gonna read in verse 33. Here's the thing, the setting in which this is taking place is called the Passover, or the Last Supper. Jesus is with his crew, his disciples, and they're eating, and there's a lot that's going on here, but we're going to zoom in on this part where he starts talking to his crew. He says, "My children, I will be with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and just as I told the Jews, so I tell you now, where I am going, you cannot come." And he says this, "A new command I give you. Love one another." It's a simple one, I guess. "As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." Whenever Jesus he says the same thing over and over again, I go, I got to pay attention to that. And then check this out, and it's the same author, 1 John 4, 7, and 8. You can turn there or just open up your phones or just read up here, whatever. It's a free country. You can scroll through Instagram. We have 8 minutes before the game. So it says, "Beloved, love us, let us love one another, for love is from God. And whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. Anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love." Not even Valentine's yet, and you're getting the love of God message. God, can you visit us? You're invited, man. You're already here. May we be available to experience you. I just don't want another church service, God, but make these moments significant for your kingdom. In the name of Jesus, amen. Will you turn to your neighbor and say, "You are marked"? And turn to your other neighbor whom you did not choose and say, "Hey, you are molded. You are molded." The sermon message the talk I have today is called Marked and Molded. Marked and Molded. I'm a dad. I have 3 kids. I'm also married, and my wife really raises the kids. I just show up. I'm grateful for her. I would be lost without her. We have 3 kids. We have a 12-year-old, a 3-year-old, and an 18-month-old. You'll see them running around. If you haven't, if you're new here, you'll meet them. They're loud. And we also have a dog, a 110-pound English lab, like big old blocky head. And his name's Coda. So I'm a father of 4. Yep. It's a lot of work, and life is crazy. And what I love about being a dad is that they're all in different seasons, right? I have this preteen. Her needs are so different than my toddler, and the toddler needs are so different than my infant. And so, we're trying to always juggle everyone's needs, right? And it's oh, that's hard, the two. But one thing I love about being a dad is those moments that make all the chaos worth it. And it's like a small glimpse, right? But it's like those very few moments where they come up and they say something like Ezra goes, "Daddy, I love you." And he doesn't quite say love. He says, "Love. I love you, Daddy." And I'm like, "Thanks, buddy. I love you, Mommy." Just randomly. It's the best moments. And then my youngest, 18 months, not quite talking, but definitely communicating. She'll walk up and just kind of kiss me on my knee. And then she'll go over and kiss my other knee. And it's just the most precious thing. I saved my junior higher for last because She used to tell me she loved me all the time. And now I have to initiate the love conversation. Hey, Buggy, I love you. I love you too, Daddy. But like, it's like a pry, right? And, but what she does do on her own all the time is she'll text me, I love you. And it's like, ooh. Like, I know she just wants to text, so she'll text it. But I'm like, I'm okay. Like, you can text that all day. You want to use your phone to text? You can text that. Go for it. Boom. I'll take anything you got. Being a dad is funny because, you know, they all have their own ways of communicating their love, their affection, their way of, like, connecting with me. But the reality is, all of them, they're all trying to express. And Jesus talks to his disciples right before he's about to be betrayed, put on a cross, whipped, dies, and resurrected 3 days after. He tells them, he says, hey, you want to tell me how much you love me? He throws down the gauntlet. And he says, love one another. This, he says, a new commandment. A commandment is like a law or a regulation or a requirement, right? So he's telling you this is a big deal. It's like the 10 commandments, and here's this one. But it's not new. Jesus had said this so many times throughout his ministry. He goes, hey, what's the great commandment? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So this isn't new, but Jesus is saying it's new because what he puts at the end, as I have loved you. So Jesus, like a great leader, like a great parent, like he models not only words, but in actions. He doesn't say, do as I do, or do as I say, not as I do. He does, hey, do as I do. And that's the commandment he says. And this word love, much is made of it, but the way he said it, oh, my mouth's a little dry, let me get. He spoke in what's called Aramaic. Can you say Aramaic? John is writing the book of John in Greek. Can you say Greek? So what John as the author is, he is selecting a word that models and demonstrates what Jesus was saying in Aramaic, which is different than what he wrote and penned in Greek. Why does that matter? It's because if Jesus modeled a love of, okay, like a brotherly love, he would have chosen a word like phileo. If he modeled a selfish love, he would have chosen a word, whatever that selfish love word is. If he modeled sexual love, like the one that's in marriage, he would have chosen phileo. But he chose this word because he's watched Jesus for 3 years throughout the ministry, and he watched how Jesus modeled love. And even more so, they're in a moment where Jesus is modeling love all over the place. Agape is an interesting word. I'm going to hold the definition at the end, but it means to love one another in your community without emotion. It's literally a choice. It's a declaration. It's a selfless love. And so Jesus, in chapter 13, verse 1, he says this. Can you pull up 13, verse 1? He says he's about to show his full extent of his love. His full extent of his love. And the full extent of Jesus' love was this. They're at the Passover meal. Jesus sponsored this meal. He's the CEO and co-founder and founder of Jesus Enterprises. He has his crew. He has his board. He also hired a team of servants to be there and take care of everything, to cook everything, to clean, to wipe, and to be servants. So in a hierarchy, you see Jesus at the top. Above his inner core, above his outer core, above the 120 else that follow. But it's literally him. And then all of a sudden you see him do something absolutely insane. He gets down, he grabs a towel, and he starts washing the disciples' feet. He modeled servanthood in a way where he didn't have any concern for title or position. What he said was, because you have to understand, when you serve food, if you're a host, that's like a high-level servant. If you serve food, that's like in the hierarchy. If you serve wine, that's there. If you cleaned up, that's there. But at the bottom, the very bottom of the list is this person that washes people's feet. And you think about the disgusting feet of the disciples at that time. They had sandals on. And they didn't walk in concrete and carpet. They were walking on dirt and stone. And so their feet and their toenails, I don't know if they had toenail clippers, but come on, that's disgusting. Think about the toenails they had and the dirt underneath that. And Jesus is getting down on his hands and knees, and he starts washing his disciples' feet, unconcerned about his position or title, and just says, hey, I'm going to model love for you. And then he goes forward, and he washes this guy's feet. His name is Judas Iscariot. And this guy, Judas Iscariot's about to betray him. He's literally contemplating in his mind in this moment while Jesus grabs his feet, and Jesus knows it and probably looks at him and goes, you're about to betray me, stab me in the back. You followed me for 3 years, and this is how you're going to treat me. But he's still sitting there, and he knows it, but yet he doesn't come up with that. He just loves them with no condition. It's an unconditional love. There's no expectation of a return because Judas ain't going to give no return. This is Jesus, the great orator. This is the one, the great sermoner. He could sit out there and thousands of people would listen to him for days. He could have convinced Judas not to betray him. He could have convicted his heart, but he sat there and he literally just loves them and says, go do your thing without condition. Jesus is modeling a love that is insane. And then he goes forward, and not only that, he gets up, and he sits back down, and he says, I'm going to give you a commandment. He doesn't control Judas. In fact, he says, go, it's time. You know, so often in our world, I sell software for a living, okay? And as a software sales guy, I sell large enterprises, and I use what's called give to get. Hey, if I give you a demo, I expect to understand what your requirements are for a purchase. If I give you a POC, I expect to have access to the executive signer. If I give you my resources, I expect in return. And this is natural stewardship in our life. This is how you need to operate. Otherwise, you're going to be throwing your resources out to the wazoo, and you're not going to get a return, especially at work, and you'll probably get fired. But Jesus is modeling this kind of love amongst his community that says, there is no give to get. This is hard for me because I always measure. I always go, well, if I put this amount of effort in, I expect this kind of return. If I invest this amount of money, on average, I'm going to get X, Y, and Z %. But Jesus is saying, punt the numbers. Love as I love. Unconditionally, I'm going to get down and I'm going to say, I'm just going to love you in a way and model in a way that says there are no expectations of a return. This is hard. This is impossible. And that he doesn't control in a world that literally always questions, how can a good God allow bad things happen to us? It's like, well, that good God gave us all free will. He could have just controlled us all to make us answer the same way and be the same way and be the same person and follow him the way he wants. But yet he says, I would rather them choose to come show their affection themselves. Like my kids. Like I don't want to control them to say I love you. I want them to do it. Just come up and kiss my knee. He says, as a good God, I want to give my people the free will to make their own decision, and he doesn't control them, even if it means that they're about to make a decision that will hurt them for the rest of their life. Because when we love people, sometimes we want to get in the way. We become so codependent, and we're like, I have to protect them, and I have to defend them, and I have to go fight their battles for them. And Jesus goes, you do you. I'm right here. He models a type of love that's not controlling. If you're in a relationship that's controlling, I would argue and I would submit to you, maybe that's not the love that Jesus is modeling. He's also unoffendable. He moves on through the night and through the meal. And a couple more things, and then we'll get into the moment. But he moves on through the meal. And all of a sudden he says this amazing commandment like, hey, love as I have loved you. But then Peter chimes in right after that. He says, hey, where are you going? I want to go. Jesus is giving a new commandment, a new requirement. He's like, here you go, guys. This is going to change your world. And Peter goes, "What? Where are you going, bro? That's all I care about." And I don't know about you, but there's sometimes when I'm coaching, I coach a varsity basketball team, and I'll coach them something, and I'll give them like this amazing word of advice. I'll just like, go do it. And they're like, yeah. And they go out and don't do it. And I'm like, I'm offended. I'm like, why aren't you doing it? And Jesus models being unoffendable. He models just literally answering Peter in that moment going, well, Peter, you're actually going to deny me 3 times. And he goes, no, I'm not. No way. He says, before the rooster crows, you will. Pastor Jen talked about Peter last week. It was such a good message. Check it out on YouTube. You will. You'll deny me. He doesn't get offended by the question because all Peter cares about is where he's going. He don't care about what Jesus is saying. And here's the thing. He models, you can disagree, but still be in agreement. So often in our culture, in our world, Jesus is modeling this radical love that I could disagree with what you're saying, but I'm not going to cancel you. I could still be for you, but I may disagree with you. But we're so offendable that everything someone says that's different than me all of a sudden is like, well, they don't agree with me, so it's personal, and I'm going to cut them off. But Jesus is modeling like, hey, you can have a conversation. You can say, well, yeah, I mean, you can't come with me, but, whatever. Because Philip and Thomas does the same thing. And if you read it, it's repetition. He says, Jesus answered, Jesus answered, Jesus answered. And they're all attacking it in different ways. They're all asking him like their own insecurities. It's a great moment, but I'm not preaching about that. But he literally sits there and has that conversation with them. And he can disagree, but still be in agreement. In marriage, I have not been married as long as some of you, but I have learned this. There's going to be a lot of disagreements. But you can still be in agreement. But if you're so easily offended, that's not true love. Because you're so concerned about yourself. See, Jesus models this: unselfish concern for others. He models it. So I just spent 10 minutes talking about Jesus, about how incredible of a model he is. And I'm about to tell you, that's got to be you. And when I'm reading that, and I don't know about you, but I go, that's impossible for me to live out. If this is a commandment that God is giving me, I'm going to fail every time. I've literally walked out of these doors and I've gotten in a screaming match with a resident. I've been the guy that's gone and got food at one of our favorite places downtown and I haven't tipped. I'm the guy, and I'm like, this is impossible, Jesus. Like, how are you expecting us? This is a commandment you've given us. This is something you're telling us before you die, is to act like you and to love like you in our community. That's impossible. There's no way. And then I realized that's exactly the way he wants it. Because if we could do it without him, he would have never had to die. If we could do it without him, the 10 Commandments would have been the 10 Commandments. We would have never seen Jesus. Moses would have been the guy. But we couldn't do it without him. He tried it. He tried it in the Garden of Eden. He tried it so many different ways. He's like, this is the only way. It's got to be me. And I've got to do it for him. And the thing is, we want control. We want the ability to say, tell me exactly what to do so I can do it. Pray an hour a day. Got it. That's my commandment I'm all about. Let's go. We want it in our will, in our ability. But Jesus says something crazy. Love. And he models an impossible love. Unconditional and unselfish. Just legitimately impossible. And I felt him say, here's the encouraging thing, because that's pretty discouraging. It's like, Jesus, are you setting us up for failure? He's like, I want you right there. I want you in a place of emptying yourself so much that I can actually take the position of authority and do it for you. So I want you to get caught up so much more in my victory than in your ability. Can I tell you, preaching is like the weirdest thing. You prepare, you try, you learn, and you deliver it. And you go, does that make sense? You do your best, but it's like, you're not sure if it's hitting or whatever. And you're like, all right, God. But it says he uses preaching like it's like a foolish thing to change hearts and minds. Church is a foolish thing. But this is what he's called. And he says this. Turn to your neighbor and say, marked and molded. Marked and molded. He says, if you're willing to be empty, if you're willing to surrender, if you're willing to let him take the proper place and actually be king of your life, check this out. You're going to be marked by my love. It says this. It says, by this, all men, everyone, will know that you're my disciples. Everyone will know. Everyone will know. That you're not going to be marked by your worship, guys. You're not going to be marked by your building or your location. You're not going to be marked by your preaching. You're not going to be marked by your marketing programs. Can I tell you, we're going to do some incredible things this year, but we're not going to be marked by what we do. We're going to be marked by who we are. Pastor D said something to me. He said, hey, if I was to send you out, what's your life message? And I'm like, I said something really quick because I felt like I had to, and then I started thinking about it. I was like, I don't know if that's it. And then later on in the conversation, I said something else, and I was like, yeah, I don't know if that's it either. But then I started thinking about, what do I know to be known for? A smiley face is a good logo. That works. But the smiley face, it automatically represents something. It marks you. You're marked when you were a kid and you got a smiley face for getting a good grade. If I have the logo of, there it is. The 49ers. 27 minutes and counting. Hurry up. Get done with this. Wrap it up, bro. But what's the first thing that comes to mind with this logo? Purdy, Steve Young, Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, their defense, their offense, whatever it is. Go throw up the next one. There's something that marks you with this logo. Go ahead. Yo! I did this for Mark Neal, who's not here, okay? But you'll listen to it. I think about the black hole and how I'm going to get stabbed. I'm just kidding. It would have been funnier if Mark was here. And you can go to the next one. Let's move on because I don't want to offend anyone. The Golden Arches. Salty fries and a Big Mac. It's marked. It marks you globally. In Monterey, I saw a black golden arch. I was like, what is that? That's cool, I guess. And I guess there's a green one or whatever. But okay, next one. You see the apple. And some of you are like, I'm a Samsung user, right? And then other of us are like, that's it. What are you marked by is Steve Jobs and his desire for simplicity. My kids can open up my phone, take pictures. It's like my camera reel is hilarious. All blurred images. And then there's this one. Marked. When someone sees our logo, what are they going to be marked by? When they see our community, how are they going to be impressed by? Is it going to be our worship? What is it going to be? And I felt like as I was preparing for this, I was thinking about the last year in this transition, year and a half, that we've been on this journey together. And I've been like, you know what's crazy? Is we've been able to keep unity in the midst of transition. So much so that some of you in here don't even know that this was a different church at some point. And those that were a part of Hillside, those who are part of Gateway, the unselfish concern for your own needs on both sides had to come together to keep unity. The love that we had to show. You know how hard it is when you're used to something for a very long time and then all of a sudden everything changes? It's uncomfortable and it requires you to be in a position of like, And can I tell you, I'm so proud to be a part of our community. Because of the unselfish concern, the Jesus-like love that we have shown throughout this entire process, that we've been able to fight for unity in the midst of chaos, in the midst of hurt feelings, in the midst of pain. And we've said, we're going to be marked by love. You know how I know this? When I walk in, the first time I came here, Mark and Sabrina were welcoming. They saw my kids. They gave me a big hug. They were like, how's it going? And here's where the kids go. And you need to go to the bathroom. I was like, yeah, and go this way. And I felt so at home. And it was marked by love. It was a genuine concern for me and for my feelings. And then you meet Donna. And Donna's like the most pure, crazy woman. I'm so amazed by her text messages and how she loves. And she loves in such a way that's like, I will do whatever it takes. And she models it. I look at her, I'm like, Jesus, these are giants among us. And I look at Jerry, and before service, he's picking up trash, and he's preparing, and he's fixing stuff, and he's doing so many things that you have no idea, and he's getting all the ushers in place, and he's loving, and he's serving, and he's unselfishly working on behalf because the love of Jesus has marked him. And you know what happens when you walk in this room? I want everyone, if you're brand new here, here's what I want you to know. And when you leave, we're marked by the love of Jesus. We're not going to have the best worship on the planet. Maybe we will. I don't know. Maybe we'll have the best experience. Definitely not the best preacher today, right? Pastor D will come back next week and fix all my errors. But the bottom line is, let's be marked by this love. That's what Jesus is calling us to. And it's unselfish concern. This love marked John so much. In 1 John 4, it says this. It says, this is 60 years later after the Passover. 60 years. And John is writing another book. He's about to die. And he's still contemplating this commandment. It's marked him so much. And he writes it. He says, beloved, which is the same word, by the way, as my children. It's only in John and 1 John is that word. It's tied. It's exactly what Jesus said. He says, it's exactly the same word. It's like there's a connection. There's some significance here. And John goes, beloved, let us love one another. For love is from God. You'd think the older you get and you've been serving Jesus and preaching and teaching and writing, you'd have a little bit more revelation. You'd be like, here's how you change your city. I don't know what I would say. But 60 years later, after living with Jesus for 3 years, he's still marked and says, and whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. All of a sudden it translates, not just Jesus is modeling, it's actually God. And he finishes, anyone who does not love does not know God. Because God is love. So what he's telling us is, when we're quick to tell people where they're wrong and where they're going, we're not being godlike. Even in our heart, to step up and draw a line, sometimes Jesus empathizes first. I'm thinking of a moment with Lazarus. Lazarus, one of his best friends, had died. And his sisters came to him and tried to get him to come earlier. And his sisters goes like, hey, Jesus, if you were just here, but you didn't come, you didn't care. And Jesus already knew he was going to raise him from the dead. But he sits in that moment with her, and my favorite verse, John 11:35, Jesus wept. And he weeps, and he feels the pain. He could have corrected her. I'm about to raise him, you moron. He's the Word. But instead, he just weeps with her. He feels the pain. That love will mark us, and everyone will know. We see Jesus at the Passover serving. Man, when you serve someone that way, they're going to know that's different. When you can agree, but disagree, but still agree. When you're not offended by being called the wrong whatever. Like, we live in a culture where we got to dance. Like, am I saying the right thing? I'm sure I'm offending you somewhere. And guess what? We're all going to offend each other. But we can live unoffendable because we say, you know what? I know they're dealing with their own stuff. And you empathize. You get past yourself. If you're selfless, you shouldn't actually be offended. But selfishness says, you're attacking me. No, we're not. We're in this thing together. I'm not going to control you. Right? This is what Jesus is modeling. And this is what he's saying, that by our love will be marked and everyone will know. And I'll just share this. Yesterday, Pastor D already talked about it. This is yesterday. All this is fresh. I'm trying to avoid that whole thing because I'm going to cry because I'm a crier, I guess, as Pastor D said last week. But we show up yesterday, and guys on a Saturday are showing up to help us clean up trash. Unconcerned. I kept saying thank you to the guys. And they go, stop it. Stop saying thank you. This is what we do. We're in this thing together. I'm like, no, what? We're in this thing together? Jesus is modeling, just like Pastor D was saying earlier, when you get into the dirt and you get into the dirtiness and you just say, hey, I'm just going to meet your need because I'm trying my best. I'm giving what I got. And there's no condition. At least I hope not. They're all going to be like, you pay me $10 later, No condition. This is the selfless love of Jesus. So unselfish concern for others. Love forces us to deal with different personalities, different backgrounds, and beliefs. It forces us. It's not something you want to do. But and it's impossible to do it in your own strength. And it requires you to just say, okay, Lord, I'd rather sleep in on a Saturday morning. But I know there's a need. So I'm going to get up, put my boots on. It's not my strength. God, you're going to help me. Put my gloves on and go serve to model what Jesus modeled because I'm marked by that love. Molded, say molded, and I'm done. See, Jesus wants us to be at the end of ourselves. That's humility. He's calling us to humility. Philippians says, Jesus did not consider himself equality with God, but he came as a nature of a servant. It's humility. And humility isn't just thinking low of yourself. It's actually not thinking of yourself at all. Because sometimes we think that, pride is only when you think that you're better than other people. But if you're beating yourself up, you're still thinking about yourself, and that's pride, and it's stealing. But humility says it's not even about me. Man, I just started dreaming, and I was like, I probably shouldn't say this. This is crazy, but what if we had a community that lived this in their life. And I'm trying to live it in my own life. And I started praying that, and again, conviction, like, Lord, I can't do, what? This is crazy. This is an insane call, Jesus. And the more you learn about Jesus, the more you go, he's just like, you stop. Like, your teachings are just too much. And it's like, no. I'm going to mold you, son. I'm going to mold you. And it's this thing called, I call it like poco a poco. Poco a poco. Say with me, poco a poco, little by little. It's a momentary thing. It's a daily thing. You just start to empty yourself and say, yeah, that's a selfish thought. You know what? I'm going to give that up. And before you know it, what happens is the Holy Spirit actually starts changing your heart. And you start loving in a way where it's like natural. It's like who you are. Pastor D is going to talk about identity next week. Come back out for that. It's so important for you to know who you are. In a culture that lacks identity, it's so important. So important to get involved with life groups, because in a life group, you can tell each other what's going on, and you can call out. That's probably a selfish thought there. You're thinking only of yourself, and you can't do that in a church service like this. It has to be in a smaller group. And poco a poco, little by little, you start to move. And the Holy Spirit, he says this. Check this out. This is like one of the craziest things. I don't have it up. But in John 14, 15 to 18, he says, I won't leave you an orphan, but I'll give you a counselor. I'm going to give you the support you need to remind you. And he uses this word, advocate, counselor and advocate, because he's molding you. And sometimes you need a counselor, and sometimes you need an advocate. Because counselors would tell you, you know why you can't forgive that person? It's because when you were a kid and you were abused and you've never dealt with that trauma, you need to deal with that. Otherwise, you're just going to have this thing come up over and over again in your marriage, and it's just like a blockage for you. But the Holy Spirit will be your counselor. He'll remind you. He'll remind you of some random moment way back when where you have bitterness, and he'll start dealing with you on it. You know, so many of my conversations with Pastor D are like, dude, I realized why I'm doing this, and it's because all of a sudden I'm getting bitter over here, and I'm not embracing my season. And it's like, because the counselor's talking to me, because he's working on us, and he's molding me, and it's by the love of God. And as he molds us, he begins to change us little by little, poco a poco, and he's our advocate. And I'll leave you with this story, and I'm done. I'm done so we can go watch the Niners game on time. Many of you heard my story. You know, my mother and father-in-law had the flood in Lover's Lane, you know, go drive bears, whatever. But we're dealing with a lot. And you know, we ripped out all the floors, and we started dehumidifying everything to try to save the house, and so it doesn't start molding. And my father-in-law's a contractor, and so he's able to do all that, and it's great. And I was demoing, and we're going through all the ripping of the stuff. And you know, we're emptying everything. It's like gone. Like, it's all there. It's like, whoa, this is crazy. And all of a sudden, you know, the county started coming, and Red Cross started coming, and FEMA started coming, and they were coming and talking to my mother and father-in-law and saying this. They said, hey, I know it's slow, but help is on the way. And who knows if they pick it up, right? We're praying that they do. Like, FEMA, if you're listening, let's go, bro. Hurry up. I know it's slow, but help is coming. And Jerry comes up and shares his testimony about how he landed here 20 years ago. It's like crazy. Help is coming. And all of a sudden I started realizing, as I'm studying this word advocate, it's like, oh my gosh, Holy Spirit, you're advocating on our behalf. Because FEMA was saying something. You have to understand, you have to go to the governor, and the governor goes to Joe Biden. He's got to sign in the president's office, and there's discussions happening about you outside of your room that you have no control over, and you need an advocate to fight on your behalf, because you can't do this yourself. And so when you show up when you show up to love someone, an unselfish concern, and all of a sudden they start breaking down, you go, why are you breaking down? I'm just doing me, bro. And they go, because the advocate has been working on your behalf and they're having conversations with them, and you just show up and you're trying to love and you're doing your best, but that love changes the person. And it's not what you've done, because you know you can't do it without him. But God, the advocate, is having conversations behind your back, reminding them and reminding you he's not going to leave you an orphan. He's not going to leave you an orphan, but he leaves us an advocate. Okay, that was a lot. That was a lot, but there's someone fighting for you. And God's method for miraculous movements are through messy moments. This is messy. Loving is messy. We have a pretty church, but Jesus is calling us to live messy. What I mean by that is relationships are messy, forgiving is messy, surrendering is messy, walking with God and Jesus is messy. And I'm sorry if the church has put something on you that it's got to be perfect. That ain't it. The true love of Jesus says, hey, this is messy. You keep going. You're marked. You're getting molded. You walk in that. You move in that, and let the Holy Spirit do it on your behalf. And He alone will fight your battle. And you'll stand. And my statement today is embrace the mess. Let's be marked and embrace the mess.